entirely sure yet. Um, I hope I did everything correct. It seems like I'm live. Um, let me know in chat if I am live. Would be nice. So for today, I wanted to be covering the initiative. Um, it's a very interesting topic. For as like a I I didn't really know beforehand the exact description of an initiative, so I even needed to Google it. Oh, sorry for the lighting there. Um, so what the initiative is about is that there's one side, either white or black, who is like an damaged pawn structure, which is going to be solved soon, or someone is behind in development, or at least a problem or an issue which is going to be solved soon. But we are trying to use the initiative to make sure that our opponent isn't able to solve that. So we want to strike first before our opponent is able to solve any of his issues. And I was wondering if the people who are reading already or who are watching the show already know any of the openings in which the initiative is very important. So there are a couple of openings. For example, the French is not one of them, I would say. The French is, for example, a very strategical opening, a very close position, and it's not an opening about the initiative. So I was wondering if you're watching, if you already know a couple of openings in which the initiative is important, and let me know. Um, so one of the openings in which I think at least where the initiative is very important is, for example, the Sicilian. So you have the Sicilian. Usually people play the open Sicilian starting with knight 3. And for example, the Najdorf or the Dragon is a very good example. Both sides are just developing. And for example, we play the Dragon. What's Black's idea in this position is to play bishop g7, castle kingside, and then start to develop. And the most critical response to this for white is to just develop on the queen side. So the most played move is bishop e3, bishop g7, queen d2, castles, f3, knight e6, and queenside castles. And what you will see is now that white has castled queenside and black has cancelled kingside, and there will be a race about the initiative. White will start to attack on the king side, and black will start to eventually attack on the queen side. And it's very important who is first, who strikes the first blow. And the initiative is very important. If you're the first to create a threat, your opponent has to deal with the threat. And so he basically has to waste a move to deal with it. And because he wasted a move, you're able to create another threat because you got another move to do something. And in that move, you should be trying to create more threats, more danger to your opponent's king. So let's go to a couple of games. I didn't really select puzzles. Last time we had a session about undefended pieces, and those were more puzzles. But today I wanted to go a bit more through games. Usually the initiative is not something very... it's not something that is of a very short nature. It's more like a long-term thing. And first I wanted to have a look at this position, and it's white to move. And the thing about this position is that we're down a pawn, and if we allow our opponents to develop, we would be in some trouble because we're still down a pawn. So we need to do something quick. That's what the initiative is about. We need to act quick to make sure that our opponent isn't in time to develop his pieces, get to coordinate. So we need to prevent it and create our own threats before we allow that to happen. So how should white play this position? If you've already seen a good move, just mention it in chat. in Alekhine defense you have to take the initiative, otherwise you're gonna get killed. Yeah, in Alekhine defense is also interesting. The problem with the Alekhine is that you're giving up some space, so you need to fight back, and it's definitely about initiative, because if you're not fast enough, you're gonna get crushed. So it's definitely one of the openings I would say about the initiative as well. So I'm reading b4, b5. Definitely an idea. So if you have a look at the position, one of the main things is that it's clear that Black's king actually is in some trouble on c8. This bishop is already cutting off the king, and if we could get some more pieces around his king, it's gonna get crushed. Still, I would say b4 might be a little bit too slow. Probably Black will continue with his development, some move like knight h6. Let's do that actually. So b4, knight h6 I would say. Okay, b5. And in this position after knight c7, kind of feels like we have been a bit too slow. Okay, we definitely got an attack going, but we had something more powerful in the position. Soon knight f7 is coming, already hinting at taking the bishop. We do not want to lose it. And if we move it back to g3, then it's going to get cut off with e5. So we definitely need to move fast here and pose some more problems than this to Black's position. So I would say b4 is a bit too slow. We need to act fast. So if you want to act fast in a position, what you should be thinking about is moves that create threats, moves that come with a tempo, and definitely moves towards Black's king. So b4 feels a bit too slow. B takes a6. Okay, so another move that is suggested is c5. c5 is definitely a move that is creating threats, because we're basically threatening to take the knight on a6. And that would ruin Black's pawn structure. So let's say he goes knight h6. Then we could consider taking, and after he takes back, we can, for example, play queen b3. After which it seems like Black's gonna get mated. However, I think that c5, or at least there's something more powerful than c5. For example, after c5, Black can retreat the knight to c7. And it seems like Black is kind of holding his own here. Okay, the position is probably pretty bad, but the position was gonna be pretty bad anyway. But we have something more powerful than this. Maybe we could consider something like rook c1 here, trying to get the rook in, but it's still kind of slow. We could have played this much faster than we did in this c5. So I'm still trying to search for a better move than either c5 or b4. And if you want to try to find the best move in the position, you should be trying to search for tempo moves. Moves that come with threats. Threats that will improve your own position. One of the problems also with the move c5 is that one of the ideas definitely for white in this position is to play queen a4 to get the queen to the queen side and try to attack the king. Because a7 is an undefended pawn. And let's say in this position we played c5 and we said, okay, knight c7 should probably be played to avoid bishop takes a6. We would really like to play the move queen a4, targeting the a7 pawn and also trying to get in queen a5, some queen c7 ideas. So definitely an idea, but the problem is once we go c5, suddenly this queen is attacking the square. So queen a4 would be a horrible blunder here, because simply the queen can just be taken. So that's also one of the things why we don't want to play c5 that early on in the position. So a more powerful move. Yeah, and Salih Kalon seems to have found the right move in the position. So usually when you have the initiative, you should be trying to search for moves that come with a tempo. Because by playing the move bishop d3, we're attacking the queen, which means that our opponent has to waste another move moving the queen out. The only move for black is to play queen g4, but this is not a useful move for black. Now eventually we can kick away the queen once again, and black is wasting so many tempi on moving his queen while we're slightly improving our position. The bishop is slightly more active on d3, but most importantly, if we chase away the queen from the 4th rank, we're able to play queen a4 eventually. So if in a position where you're down a pawn, your pawn structure is quite bad, or your opponent is lacking in development, you should be trying to play moves that come with tempos, create threats, and that is why bishop d3 is definitely the move here. You can still play c5 afterwards because bishop d3 was with a tempo. One of the things is also that if you start with the move c5, knight c7, and then play bishop d3, then black could consider queen d5, because now he suddenly has this square available for the queen. And it's kind of annoying that there's pressure on the d3 bishop. So that is why we start with the move bishop d3. We chase away the queen to g4, so they cannot go to d5. And then we play the powerful move c5, threatening again to take the knight and ruin the pawn structure. So let's say black tries to develop again with knight h6, which was a move he would like to play. Then we could, for example, take on a6, b takes a6, and queen b3 again. After which black is just getting checkmated on b8. He could try maybe bishop e8, but it's not looking good. After queen b8, king d7, queen c7, it's just checkmate. So again, c5 is a move which is creating a threat against the black position. Black has to deal with this again. He already developed the knight to a6, so we would like to develop the other knight to h6. But the problem is we are having a threat, so he again has to move the same piece twice, which is not really what you want when you are not where you're underdeveloped. So black has to play knight c7, and now again a tempo move. I mentioned the move before, h3. The queen is again being chased. It's not a very useful move for white in the way we would like to. Okay, it's chasing away the queen, but the move h3 doesn't add much to our position. But after queen h5, which is the only square for black basically for the queen to go to, then we can go queen a4 because we've chased away the queen from the 4th rank. And we're now creating the threat of queen a7. So again, a move which is very difficult to deal with for black because it creates another threat in the position. And black should probably play a6. Doesn't have much other moves. And now we want to finish off the position. We are getting the queen in. The bishop is also pointing towards the king side, queen side. I mean towards the king. We have got the queen, the bishop, and not a lot of defenders. There seem to be some defenders, but actually they're not doing much. They're not really covering any important squares. So what is the next move in this position for white if we want to finish off the game here? Because it definitely seems like there should be a way to finish it off. Yeah, so h3 was a very nice move, chasing away the queen. But now we need another powerful move. If you've seen it, just mention it in chat. And let's see if we can crush the black position. Queen a5, very nice move. Another move with a tempo. So this is really what the initiative is about. You should be trying to play tempo moves, especially if you sacrifice the pawn. Trying to play everything with a threat comes with a tempo. Black has to waste another move to move his knight out. And let's say he goes knight e8. How do we actually finish off black here? There's a very nice way to finish off black, and would be nice if you spotted it as well. I see that someone's mentioning the idea of bishop takes a6. For sure, very powerful. The problem is in this position, black can maybe take on d6, and the c pawn is pinned. Maybe after queen b6 you're still winning, but this is not the clearest and not the fastest way to finish off. It's completely winning still for white, but there's an even cleaner way to win the game. Um, there are probably a couple of moves here, but it seems like Patrick has seen it. The very nice looking Queen A6 is the way to immediately finish off black here. This is a kind of a known idea actually. The following checkmate that will occur. We're threatening first of all to checkmate black on a8, and it seems logical to take back the queen. But after bishop a6 we have got this very nice mate. Maybe black can try to play knight d6 again. The problem, however, for black is that after queen a8 check, king c7 is forced. We can take the knight with check, and there's no way to protect the rook. So you take back the pawn, but after queen takes d8, we're up a full rook. So this very nice looking queen takes a6 is the easiest way to finish off the game here. Bishop a6 was also winning, and probably some other moves, like for example queen b6 is winning. There are probably a couple of ways here, but this is really the way how you want to play positions where you have the initiative. Just create a threat on every single move, and just try to improve your position while doing those threats. Let's go to another game. Let's go to one of my own games. This is maybe even my favorite game ever. There are a couple of choices for that, of course. You've always got a couple of games of yourself which you probably like a lot, and this is one of my own, which I wanted to show, and it was really about the initiative. It started out as a Grunfeld. I mentioned the Sicilian earlier on as an opening, which revolves around the initiative, but the Grunfeld is definitely one as well. You start with the move d5 here, trying to open up the center, and very often the center will get open, and the initiative will be important, as that is very often the case in open positions. He played knight f3, bishop g7, and he went for the interesting move h4. Basically, white is playing in a very brutal way. He's trying to open up the h file with h5 coming. And with his bishop on g7, eventually he wants to take and then get a bishop h6, because black is very likely to castle kingside, and then he's trying to get some kind of attack. And one golden rule we have in chess is that once your opponent is trying to do something on the flank, you should try to counterattack them in the center. So my next move made a lot of sense to me. The move c5. Objectively, apparently, it wasn't very good because of the move d takes c5. I thought it was still a mess after queen a5, which it actually is, but after a long line of moves, turns out to be bad for black. But luckily, we both didn't really know what the engines were saying here. We were on our own. So my opponent came up with the move h5. He's again going for the flank attack. Maybe he's not wanting to go hg6, but maybe he actually wants to go h6, because then the bishop needs to go back to f8 and we cannot castle anymore. So h6 will be a problem. However, I thought that I could maybe grab the center. By playing the move c takes d4, I could try to exchange my c pawn for a d pawn, and then try to go e5 as soon as possible. So he played the move h6, I went back to f8, and then he recaptured, and then I striked him with the move e5, trying to redevelop my bishop again. And this is already kind of the first slight exercise for the game. It's actually it's kind of a difficult moment, a very complicated moment, but it is clear that this position is about the initiative. The center is very open. There's a lot of tension in the center, and in such a position, you do not want to play slowly. If I manage to get in the moves d4, d4 and e4, it's gonna be very tough for white, because my center is gonna be really strong. He doesn't have a lot of space to move around, so you need to act fast here with white. So first little exercise for today, what do you think is the best move here to try and counter the center? let's see. If you see the best move here for white, just type it in chat. And it's not an easy move, I can tell you. And it was also not played in the game. So it's definitely not easy. In the game, the move knight f3 was played, but it's definitely clear that such a move is too slow. He's allowing me to play the move d4, chasing away the knight, and this is not really what you want with black. With white. So the best move in the position here for white is the very powerful bishop g5, continuing with development and not caring about material, which is sometimes very important if you're getting pushed away. I probably would have taken the knight. He takes back. He's creating threats along both diagonals against the knight, so it's double pinned. I need to defend it again, probably with the move knight to d7. And after knight d5, it's definitely clear that white is posing a lot of threats in the position, creating a lot of pressure on my pieces. And this would have been a very difficult position. It's still kind of okay, but it's definitely clear that white is having the initiative and creating a lot of problems for me to face. One of the ideas might be rook h3, rook e3, getting in some pieces. He would also like to castle queenside, getting the rook to d1, and in general creating a lot of threats. So he should have gone for the material, not caring about he should have gone for the initiative, sorry, and not caring about the material, and just pose me quick questions that I need to face, not to lose the initiative basically. Because what he did was play the move knight f3, and by playing this move he lost the initiative. He now I took over the initiative because he didn't. I played the move d4, coming with a tempo, and the reason why he played the move knight f3 was because he saw the tactic knight takes e5 here. But again, when you're playing for the initiative in general, you should not care too much about material, so I didn't mind sacrificing a pawn. The idea behind knight takes e5 is that after d takes e3, which seems like a move you want to play, white can win material here with queen takes d8, king takes d8, knight takes f7 with a double attack. We have to move the king out and he takes the rook. White is in exchange and 2 pawns up, so good position for white. So we do not want to take the knight. Instead, I wanted to play another move, which I played in the game. Try to find the best move here. We're trying to focus on our development, trying to develop as fast as possible, not caring about material too much. And yeah, how should we pose questions to white here? It's also with the knight on e5 and the knight on c3 being very loose. The knight's already on attack on c3. There could also be some tactics that we should try to make work. So there are 2 good moves here. So one move I'm seeing suggested in chat is to play the move queen a5. It definitely does pin the knight on c3. So the knight is not, oh sorry for that arrow. The knight is not able to go away, and we're attacking this knight. So definitely not an idea. But the problem is that white can take the pawn on d4. So we cannot leave the pawn on d4 undefended. So queen a5 is not a great move here. But there are some other strong moves in the position. No, and that's why also bishop d6 is not a great move, because we lose the d4 pawn again. After which we have no threats. So there are some moves which are okay. There is definitely one move which is the strongest. I played the second strongest move, which is also a great move, but I'm seeing bishop b4 suggested. The problem here is that white in some variations has this sneaky move, queen a4 check, which is a double attack on the bishop and the king. And the problem is that we cannot really defend it with the move knight c6, because white can take on c6, removing the defender of the b4 bishop, and after we take back he can take the bishop. And in general, if you're trying to play for the initiative, you should not be trying to exchange pieces. Here we are also directly lost after d takes e3. I think, for example, bishop g5 or even queen c3 simply. White is just 2 pawns up, has a bishop pair. So this is not the way to go. In general, you're trying not to exchange pieces when you're going for the initiative, which we would be allowing when we play bishop b4. Knight e4 is not available yet. The e4 square is guarded by the knight on c3. So if knight e4, white can just take it. Knight g4 is a move, but it doesn't add much to the position, I would say. Okay, it's attacking the knight e5. We have the knight on c3 under attack as well, but white can probably just take on g4, bishop g4, and then jump with the knight to d5. And now we do not have a development lead in the development, and we're still down a pawn, so this is not the way to go. There is a very strong move in the position for black, which is not that easy to find. The move is queen d6 here. So I had seen this move in the game, but I didn't really trust it. So the basic idea is that we're attacking the knight while we keep on guarding the d4 pawn, and the queen gets guarded by the bishop. So this would this would almost win material if it were not for queen a4 in a position for white. This is the only way to save a piece. Otherwise, we take on c3 or an e5. And here we should develop the knight. Again, we have a double attack on both knights, so he has to take. Now we take with the bishop, developing a piece with a tempo on the queen. And the only move to save the position for white was now b5. But after queen b6, we have a huge lead in development. We're ready to castle. a6 is a huge threat, and the king is still in the center. So here I would have had a huge lead in development and a great position. Instead, I went for a different move, a move which seemed very natural as well to me. If we have a look at this knight on c3, it has two active squares where it would like to go to, which make a lot of sense. One of them is knight to d5. Blocking this protection of the d4 pawn, and the other move is knight b5. So it has these two squares where we would like to jump to. So the move I saw in this position was the move knight to c6. Oh, sorry for that, knight to c6. And what the move does is, okay, it exchanges a piece, but after knight takes c6, b takes c6, it is clear that the knight doesn't have these two squares and it needs to retreat. So okay, I exchanged a piece by playing knight c6, but on the other hand I kind of getting a tempo on the knight because it needs to retreat. And now we're up in development. We have developed a knight while white has developed 0. He has all of his pieces back on the back rank. And it's also our move, so basically we're up 2 moves. I'm allowed to play develop another piece. And I was thinking in this position, and there is one move which is clearly the best move for black in this position. We are down a pawn, so take in mind that we need to develop quickly and create quick threats. If we were to allow white to play the moves g3, bishop g2, and then castle, white would still be up a pawn and have a good position. So we need to develop very quickly and create quick threats to the white position before we allow him to develop his pieces. So try to find a move which helps our position, gets our position more active, and could create some threats. To find the best move here, we need to combine a couple of things. So one thing that is clear is that the king will get into some danger, and will definitely get in danger. It takes a long while before it can castle to either side. Definitely to the queen side with all the pieces back here, but also to the king side, as already shown. Takes 3 moves to castle, which is very long. So we are definitely going after the king, and if you go after the king, it's clear that this diagonal is open. So I was already seeing some ideas with bishop b4, queen a5 to pose some questions here. The problem for us is that after the move bishop to b4, white can just play bishop to d2, developing a piece, blocking the diagonal, and white wants to trade pieces as he's up a pawn and is lacking development. So bishop b4 is definitely not the way to go, but at some point we'll try to create threats on this diagonal. And another thing is, if we have a look at the starting position, actually, there is one weak point in both camps, in the white and the black camp. And the weakest point in the camp is always the f2 and the f7 square. It's only defended by the king, while all the other pawns are defended by pieces. So definitely in some openings you could see some ideas where something gets sacrificed on f7 or f2. For example, one clear opening of this is the Italian, where white sometimes just goes knight g5, going after the initiative because he's creating already threats against the f7 pawn. So that's definitely a weak point in the position, and as we see in this position, again, this f2 is still undefended. So we gotta combine this diagonal and this weak point in the sorry for that, this weak point in the black position, in the white position. So how do we combine these ideas? Yeah, and I'm seeing the move in the chat, knight e4, very powerful move. Okay, again, we're developing the same piece, which in general you should try to avoid. You should try to develop one piece at a time and not play the same move twice, or same piece twice. But knight e4 is a very nice move because it not only combines the pressure on the f2 pawn, but it also takes away these two squares. So if we have bishop b4 coming up with queen a5, this knight definitely helps to create pressure on this diagonal. So knight e4 is a really nice move because it combines threats against on both flanks basically. What would we... also a nice idea is that after, for example, f3, which would be kicking away the knight, we have a very nice idea here. We can, for example, go bishop d6. No, sorry. I want bishop b4 first. Knight to d2. And now this diagonal is blocked. And the king has no escape squares. And we can go for the nice move, queen to g5. And it adds additional pressure to this d2 square. And the idea is mainly that after f takes e4, we have this very nice checkmate with the king boxed in on e1. So the f3 is not really a great move because actually it doesn't have a lot of threats, and we can make use of the weakened dark squares on the king side. Moving up the h pawn has not been such a good idea for white. You would rather have the pawn h2 in these positions because now the dark squares on the king side have been weakened even more. So in this position he played knight to d2, and he's trying to get rid of the knight on e4. But how should black continue in this position? If we keep in mind that we want to fight for the initiative and we want to target the white king, how should black continue in this position? There are a couple of ideas, definitely, but there's one move which jumps out, I think. Bishop to b4, yeah. Well done, Rahul. So the best move is bishop to b4, pinning the knight and creating additional pressure on the white position, on the white king. And you can see it's very difficult for white to develop any of his pieces. Basically the only move, only piece he can develop is either the queen, which you do not really want to get out. It's a piece which can be targeted very easily, so it will give us extra tempi later on to target. And you can also move the rook along the h-file, but it doesn't have any good squares. The only good square it has is h2, but it's not really a useful move. So white is facing a lot of problems here. So the move he played was queen c2, once again targeting the knight. But what move should black play in this position? Keeping in mind we want to keep the initiative. So for example, move like knight d2 is not the way to go. We do not want to exchange pieces, which would only make white's life easier. He would be developing pieces, he would be ready to castle, queenside, and this is definitely not the way to go. But how should black play instead here? Yeah, so queen a5 is definitely an idea, but it's not possible yet because queen takes e4 would be a huge problem. But instead, bishop f5 is the best move here. Yeah, it's not only protecting the knight, it's also creating some threats. Right now we would be winning a piece with knight takes d2 if white wastes a move. So before I played this move, I had to calculate one variation. The move g4 was one I had to calculate. Because I thought, okay, if it gets in g4, the problem is I cannot take it back, because then he would have, again, queen e4, check, winning a piece. So I cannot take on g4, which means that I have to move away the knight from e4. And there needs to be something very good here for me, otherwise this is not looking good. So what does black play here? Knight g3 is a move that could be considered, definitely, but the problem was that, okay, we're winning material for now, but after g takes f5, knight h1, okay, we've won the exchange, but we would be in huge problems here after queen e4 check with a double attack on the king and the knight. And if white wins the knight, then we're down material and we're a couple of pieces have been exchanged, so this is definitely not what we want in a position. In this position, knight g3 is not the best move. Yeah, knight takes d2 is a better move. We're winning the knight with a tempo on the queen, so white cannot take it back because, oh, sorry for that, because then we take the queen, winning material. So he has to take back on, on f5. And now there's a very nice way to finish off the game, actually. I hope that you are able to spot it. It's very nice. Very nice way to finish off the game. Knight d2 covers the e4 square. I don't really follow you, Patrick. Yeah, okay, knight takes d2 does not allow any queen e4 ideas. That is true, yeah. So that's for sure a good thing. But there is a very nice way to finish off the game here. So one thing you might be looking at is the move knight to b3 check, which is a check because suddenly the bishop is attacking the king, so it discovers the attack. But the problem is that after king d1, knight takes a1. Okay, we've won the rook, but suddenly white's able to develop his bishops, and after queen e4 we are facing some trouble. For sure the knight will be lost at some point because it's trapped, so we're kind of only up an exchange. And also white is creating threats of his own. He's trying to play queen takes c6, bishop g2 is coming, bishop f4, bishop g5 is coming. So white is kind of taking over the initiative here. So knight b3 would win material, but it's not really the best move. But we have better in the position. Knight f3 check, that's also a move, but it actually doesn't do much. Okay, it's a nice double check, which means that we force the king because it's checked by both the bishop and the knight. But after king d1, I don't see the follow-up because we are not really attacking anything. So knight f3 is not the way to go. But there's a very nice tactic in this position, and it's been spotted by this Pure Wolf. Knight e4 check. And the problem is that white has no way or no good way to block the diagonal. And after he plays the move king d1, we have this very, very beautiful checkmate. Knight takes f2. Kind of feels like a smaller mate. The king is cut off on the e1 and d2 squares, and he's also getting checked by the knight. It's also a double attack, but it doesn't really matter if it's checkmate. So knight takes f2 would have been a nice finish here. So in this position we could finish off white with knight d2, gf5, and knight e4 back, followed by knight takes f2, as we've seen. So instead my opponent played the move queen a4, but while I was already having development issues, and if you're having development issues, if your opponent has initiative, you really do not want to keep on playing the same piece, especially when it's the queen, because the queen is a piece that can be targeted very easily and is very vulnerable. Also, now the queen on a4 is not protecting the d2 knight anymore, so it's definitely not really something which I would like to play here. But he was simply stuck without a better move, so he had to play something similar to this. Thinking about the initiative, I developed another piece. He is creating the threat of queen c6 combined with the threat of queen takes b4. So my next move was very logical. I played the move queen b6, protecting both pieces, protecting the bishop and the pawn. But the main idea is actually that right now I have some sneaky ideas of playing bishop takes d2 check, bishop takes d2, knight takes d2, followed by queen takes b2. So to illustrate this, let's say white wastes a move. He plays rook g1, not a very logical move. Then we can take on d2, take on d2, take on d2, king takes d2, and now we take on b2 with a double attack on the king and the rook. He has to move the king away, and now we take the rook, and we will be winning. So by playing queen b6, we're not only developing a piece, but we're also creating threats. So it's definitely a move which you would like to play when you have the initiative, combining threats together with improving your own position. And also one idea is that the queen, it's a very sneaky idea, but one of the ideas is also that the queen is on this diagonal. So definitely one of the ideas is to play d3 in the future, opening up the diagonal so that we can play queen takes f2 after, which would be really devastating for the white position. And white did not really have his day in this game. Probably he had to play the move g4 to try and steer up the game a bit, trying to finally develop the bishop. So if I were to take the pawn, then he could finally play bishop g2, try to castle afterwards, and maybe try to save the position. It doesn't look that bad. He's also creating some threats against the c6 pawn. Probably what would have been good for me is d3, opening up this diagonal. He cannot allow queen takes f2, so he has to play e3, and then we take on g4. And now probably the king will get checkmated. But he had to try something like this. This seems kind of messy still. So this would have been much better than what he did in the game. Because what he did in the game was play the move queen b3. And in the past few moves, white has only been moving his queen. We had first this position, but he played queen c2, allowing my piece to develop with a tempo. Then he played queen a4, but it is allowed again myself to play a move with a tempo because I'm creating another threat. We keep on creating threats to keep on going with the initiative. And now he plays another queen move. And this allowed me to basically play another useful move. I castle queenside, bring my king a little bit into safety because it's out of the center. And also what it's doing is that it immediately puts the rook to d8 on the d file, where at some point probably stuff will happen. And another idea why I wanted to castle was that now my king is not on the e8 square, so it creates the idea of rook h8. And my opponent now finally went for the move g4, but it's definitely too late. We are almost completely developed. He's lacking a lot of development. He hasn't developed any of his bishops. He's behind in space, and he hasn't castled yet. So also his rooks are very passive, and the queen on b3 can become a target. So how would you try to continue in this position with your initiative? How would you try to create more threats against the white king and white's position in general? What things we have to keep in our mind when we are looking for initiative? I mean, general guidelines. Yeah, so I tried to talk a little bit about this in the beginning of the lecture. So one of the things we have to look for is we want to play moves with a tempo. So if you sacrifice the pawn, if your structure is badly damaged, if your opponent is behind in development, those are the moments when you should be trying to look for something concrete, looking for the initiative, trying to make use of the fact that something's wrong with your own position or your opponent's position. And then you should be looking for moves that come with a tempo, moves that create threats, and do not give your opponent the time to develop his pieces. And yeah, the Spiel Wolf seems to find the best move. The best move is d3. I've mentioned this idea before, but we're opening up the position even more than it already was. We're trying to play the move queen takes f2 and also d takes e2, which would open up the position. So if he were to take my bishop, then we could be playing the move, for example, bishop takes d2 first. He has to take back. Then we take on f2. King takes king d1 is forced. Then we take on e2, almost coming with check. Bishop to e2 and rook d2, and we're entering white's position, and he's completely busted. The king is not only gonna get checkmated, but he's also gonna be down material here. So d3 is definitely a nice move, but instead of taking our bishop, he can still try to keep it close a little bit. It's looking really bad, but he can still play the move e3, keeping the d-file close for the moment. And now again, we have an important decision to make, because he has to be very careful here. But well, yeah, we have a very important decision to make. We want to open up the position, but it's not clear yet how. We could take on g4, but we want to finish off the game in style, so this is not the way to go. White can try to hold on with a move like bishop to h3. It's looking really bad, but it's not that devastating yet. We are not winning material. So let's try to find even better moves in this position. So things we should be looking for is improving our pieces, creating threats, and in general going after the king. We're trying to checkmate the king. So the move in the position which should be played here is the move rook to e8, improving our last piece. And it's a really beautiful position we have here. We have developed our every single piece basically. Also, every single piece is on its perfect square. The rooks are on the most open files. The queen is combining this diagonal together with this line. The bishop is on this diagonal, pinning the knight. The knight is creating threats against f2, d2. Only our bishop is not that well placed, but that's the one we sacrifice, so it's not so bad that we're losing our worst piece. He takes the knight, but the idea behind rook e8 was also that we are piling up on the e-file, because after knight takes f2, the pawn is not well defended, and queen e3 is coming in with a devastating checkmate attack. Basically, there's no way to save this position. My opponent inserted the move c5, but it doesn't actually add much to his position. I can just take it with the queen. Then he played queen takes f2, queen e3 check, and we're finally getting in towards the king to g2. And now black can finish off the game. And I'm wondering if you are seeing, if you're watching, if you're seeing the checkmate. There's one way to finish off the game really quickly. It's basically a forced mate, so if you see it, let me know. And yeah, rook e8 followed by knight f2 was a very nice idea. So let me know if you're finding the idea here to checkmate white. Sorry. It's a forced checkmate. It's not such an easy one. It takes a couple of moves, but it's a forced checkmate, and your opponent cannot do anything about it, so that's good news. We've sacrificed 2 pieces already, but I mean, it doesn't really matter when your opponent hasn't developed any piece. We're down 2 pieces, but the remaining ones are much more active than white's ones. The queen on b3 is active, but it's more of a target than anything else. The knight on d2 is very passive. It's also much more a target than an active piece. We can take it even. The bishops are still on their starting squares. The rooks are still on their starting squares. And I see rook d4 mentioned in chat. It's a possible move, creating the threat of rook g4. But I think that after rook d4, there's a way for white to hang on for a couple of moves. I'm trying to find it. It's white's position is so terrible that it's really difficult to find it. But there's an even faster way to finish off the game than rook to d4. Probably white has to play something like queen c4. And okay, it's not an immediate checkmate, but it's definitely clear that it's a completely lost position. So rook d4 is not the forced checkmate that I was hoping or looking for here. Queen g5. Yeah, so I'm seeing the move is being mentioned in chat. So the move here is queen to g5, a check. Usually when you're having a forced mate, or if it's close to a forced checkmate, you should be looking for checks. So queen to g5, and if the king moves to the h file, we have rook to e3, or bishop to d6 if he moves to h2, and he's gonna get checkmated like this. Or as in the game, he could go to f2, but then bishop to c5, king f3, rook to e3, king f2, queen to g3 is checkmate. Or king f3 is also possible, but then we have rook to e3, king f2, queen to g3, checkmate. So a very nice game. White didn't have time to develop his pieces because I kept on posing threats against his king, against his pieces. I kept on developing my own pieces, combining them with threats. And as you could see in the game, once he didn't play the move bishop to g5, let's go back to that moment actually. Once he didn't play bishop to g5 in this position, he lost the initiative. From this moment on, he kept on getting pushed back, and he kept on not being able to do anything because I kept on posing threats toward his position, and in general it just fell apart in the long run because he couldn't develop any of his pieces. Let's go to another game. I'm gonna play through this game a bit quicker. This was a game in which again we have a Grunfeld, and again black here. Actually, it's white fighting for the advantage in the beginning of the game here. White went for a little bit of a sideline with bishop d2 here, with the main line being the immediate e4. The idea is to go e4 afterwards, so that after, let's see, 3 you can take back with the bishop instead of the pawn. But knight b6 was played, attacking the pawn. But white simply said that he doesn't care. White is going for the initiative with his next move here. White played the move e4, a very dangerous sacrifice. Theoretically speaking, is also very interesting for white. White is basically giving up his d4 pawn just to be able to develop his bishop. And after black takes the pawn, he can develop another piece. Eventually, white will be able to develop his knight to f3 with a tempo. But white has a more useful move. He develops the queen first, and the idea is to threaten knight b5, which would create the huge threat of knight takes c7 and also knight takes d4. So instead, oh sorry for that, instead black retreated his queen, and you can see that black wasted 2 tempi taking the pawn, and this gives white time to develop. And white is down a pawn. Black's position is kind of solid, so white does not get anything concrete, but he needs to keep on developing, needs to keep on having the pressure against black's position to keep the initiative going, to get compensation for his lost pawn. So it goes bishop f4, very active move, also opening up the d file for his rook. c6 was being played to prevent any knight d5 or knight b5 jumps. So rook d1 happened. Black blocked the d file with the bishop. White kept on developing his pieces. Finally, black manages to develop his bishop. And now white wants to create threats against the king. White is almost finished with his development, but he needs to pose some threats towards black's position. If black were to eventually castle, play some move like queen c8, unpinning the bishop, then going bishop g4, knight d7, then black would be just up a pawn. So white really needs to create immediate or pose immediate questions to the black position, not to lose the compensation for the sacrifice pawn. He needs to keep the initiative going. So white goes for the move h4. He's trying to open up the h file so that if black castles kingside, he can create an attack there. Black doesn't really want this, so he goes h5. But this does weaken the g5 square. So one of the ideas might be soon to play knight g5 to create threats against f7 or h7. E5, e6 could be an idea. So the inclusion of h4, h5 definitely benefits white. Here, white goes for another flank attack. He goes for a4, trying to push the knight away to c8. He's again playing for threats. Black castles. And now a5 happened. And knight c8 back. So black's position has gotten very passive. All of his pieces are on the 7th or the 8th rank, so not really great position. And it's definitely white having the initiative here. And probably the way to continue for white was just to play bishop to e2. And black doesn't really have any good moves. One of the main ideas in the position here is that queen takes a5 is not really possible, because then white has a nice tactic here actually. Let's make this a tactic exercise. Let's see if you can find the best move here for white. What does white do in this position? It's connected to the d7 square, but the problem is that rook takes d7 does not work because we can simply take it back. The bishop was still defended. And that is why we play the move bishop to b8, getting rid of the defender. After rook takes b8, then we take the bishop and we're up a piece. So this would have been quite nice for white. He's just up a piece or 2 pawns. Great position. So queen takes a5 is not allowed, and it's very, very difficult for black to actually find a good move here, because his pieces are so passive. Meanwhile, white wants to play knight g5, e5, e6, castle, just keep on improving his pieces, creating threats. Instead, in the game, bishop c4 was played, which seems like a very active move, but white was not aware of the tactics here. This kind of allows black to open up his position, because now queen a5 did work. White thought he had the move bishop to b8 here, but the problem was that after rook takes b8, rook d7, the bishop is on c4 instead of on e2. So now we have knight to b6 with a double attack on the rook and the bishop, and now black will win back his piece because of the double attack, after which black has gotten active again. He's still up a pawn, and white has lost all the initiative. So queen a5 would have been a great move. Instead, black played the move b5, trying to grab some space. But after bishop to b3, his pieces are still quite passive. So black misses the opportunity to get a good position. And black was really feeling the heat here. It's quite clear that he has no he has no space. He is lacking a lot of development. Knight to g5 is coming, followed by e5, e6, creating a lot of threats on this diagonal. So he needed to do something fast. And what black did here was to give up a piece. And he's trying to grab the initiative instead. white exchanges pieces. He does take the bishop, but now grabs the initiative with move c5. Oh, sorry for that. I wanted to play c5. And the idea is basically just to grab the initiative. Black has sacrificed a piece just so that he can develop his pieces, get a pawn, and now he's trying to storm up with the pawns, because actually now it's white who is underdeveloped. The black's knight is soon coming to either d6 or b6, and the king is still on e1 in the center. But the problem is that if white castles, then c4 happens, bishop to a2, and now we can play the move b4, chasing away the knight, and then b3, winning a piece. So in this way we will be winning back the piece, and with a fine position, as we're still up 2 pawns. So castle is not allowed. So white moved back his queen to be able to play bishop c2 or bishop d1, but it's clear that white is suddenly losing the initiative and black is taking over. So white is kind of in some trouble, and this all started because he played bishop c4, which was a bit too much. The bishop is actually a target. It would have been much better if we just played bishop e2, and it's very hard to develop. But bishop c4 gave black some leeway to move around his pieces and finally get back into the game. So bishop b3, queen takes a5, bishop to b8, rook takes b8, rook d7, c5, c4 with a tempo, and now knight b6 with a tempo, and black is really taking over. White took the pawn e7. It would have been much better if he just retreated the knight, getting his rook to defend his king. He needs some pieces around his king to keep his position together. After b4 and c3, black is kind of fine. He has the initiative. He has 2 pawns for the piece. A very strong passed pawn. So black would have been fine here. Instead, white went for the risky rook takes e7. The rook is in a lot of danger on e7. It can very easily become a target. And black kept on going with the initiative. He played b4. Again with a tempo on the knight. Oh, sorry for that again. And after white played knight d5, he was in a lot of trouble. The knight has to move to some square, but he needed to go to b1. b1 was a much safer square for the knight to go to, because here it can defend the king. To d5 it's kind of vulnerable. Here probably something like b3, followed by knight takes a4, with a nice initiative for black, and with very decent compensation for the lost piece because of the very strong pawns, which at some point might promote. Instead, white went knight d5, and after knight takes d5, e takes d5, b3 check. The king was in a lot of trouble. This allowed another tempo for black to improve his position. The pawns are getting so much closer to the first rank, which will promote, which is definitely not something you want to allow. So if we compare this position to the one we had before, let's say to this position, white has not achieved anything in the 5 moves that were played after this. Meanwhile, black has suddenly gotten his pawns to b3 and c4. He has to check. The king is still in the center. He moved it out because it was in check. But now c3, again creating the threat of c takes b2 or c2. White had to respond. He still cannot improve his position. b2, another threat. He's trying to promote. The queen is forced to go to b1. And black is suddenly so active. He has a very strong passed pawn. And now he improves his last piece into the game. Rook fc8. And it's clear that a lot has gone wrong for white. Knight e1 was played. But yeah, it's not looking good if you have to move the knight back to e1. You're already underdeveloped, and black could finish off the game here with the move queen to a1, bishop c2. You had to prevent the b pawn from promoting, so you had to play bishop c2, and now rook takes c3. And black is creating the threat of rook takes c2. Getting rid of the defender of the b1 queen, after which the b pawn will be able to promote to either b1 or a1. So rook takes c2 is a huge threat. White went for the kamikaze here with bishop to g6, hoping for fg6, queen g6, after which suddenly black gets checkmated. But black is not that foolish, and if he just doesn't take back the bishop and simply plays a move like rook to c1, white is just completely lost. The b pawn is about to promote. White can very easily get checkmated, and in general will probably just be down material. Here the move queen f5 queen f5 was played. And now a last final touch. How do we finish off this game with black? We've done a really nice job grabbing the initiative, but we still gotta finish it off. So black to play in this position to win the game. Rook to e1. Yeah, rook to e1 is definitely a move. Sacrificing some more material. But it's not that easy. Rook takes e1. We've still got the b1 square covered. This is probably winning, but there's an even better way. Probably this is winning if you play fg6, but after queen b1, it seems like it's kind of still protected. The b pawn is not going anywhere soon. So we have something better in this position. It's a very, very sneaky move. Yeah, queen a6. Queen a6 is a very nice move. It's with a check on the king. And it also attacks the bishop on g6. So white has to block it in some way. Or you could move the king out, let's say to g1. But now we suddenly take the bishop. Suddenly the queen has gone to g6 from a1 in 2 moves. And the king is protected. We're not down material anymore. And the b pawn is unstoppable. So black is completely winning. In the game, queen d3 was played. But again, queen takes g6. And the game was resigned. So it was a very nice game. White had the initiative. He was down a pawn. But in return, black sacrificed material to take it over. He had a poor position, but he managed to use the initiative to eventually grab the point, which didn't really look like it was gonna be at the start. This was the end of today's lecture on the initiative. I hope you joined it. I'll be back next week for a new lecture on a new topic. I did one last week as well on undefended pieces. You can also check that out on the Chess24 YouTube. And yeah, I also have my own streams. So you can check me out on Twitch as well if you want to see more. And if you want to rewatch the stream, it's also on the Coach Chess YouTube. And yeah, see you guys in another week.